and today, handy tools for SQL Server. So I do a lot of SQL Server development in fits and starts, and the one thing I really love about what Microsoft is doing in general is that SQL Server Management Studio now ships on its own cadence from SQL Server, which means they can enrich features and functions and fix bugs and do things on their own schedule. Generally speaking, they've been releasing a new version of SSMS every 4 to 6 weeks, which is amazing. You can go download it here. If you have already installed SQL Server with SSMS, my advice would be to delete the shortcut, install the SMS off this Microsoft link, and use that one instead. That way you can become decoupled. And then I like to add two tools to my SSMS. One is Apex SQL Refactor, which is an awesome tool that installs as a plugin for SSMS. And you can download that off the Apex SQL website. Their tools in general are awesome. I like them and Redgate both. And then there is a little plugin called T-SQL Lint that is super handy. And we're going to show SSMS and both plugins in this video by way of just a kind of minimum set of free tools that you can use to do SQL Server development and to make your SQL Server better. I'm going to use some SQL code that I have laying around, the bicycle demo, which is at my GitHub in test.etl. And so if you've watched some of the other videos, I often use this as my SQL Server demo. Here we are in SQL Server Management Studio. We're in my bicycle test project, and from the ad hoc folder, we've loaded test ETL1 SQL. And this is a quick test script I threw together, but it is worthy of having good results. So I'm going to actually start by linting this script, and I'm going to do that by using the TS-lint external tool that I added. So let's just take a look at that really quick. You can see that I provided the path to where the TS-lint executable was, which is tslint.console.exe. So when you npm install tslint-g, it installs it wherever your default install path is. And then we're going to invoke it with the item path argument in the directory that our console was in. So it's going to find all the files. We're going to have that go to the output window. The item path argument is a mapping to basically whatever tab is in focus at the moment you invoke the script. So what's great about that is I can select this tab, go into Tools, and invoke TS-lint, and it will run the command line and then reintegrate the output window, at which point I can actually go and click through the script, and it will call out all the things that it didn't like about my script. And so it's got some useful things about the structure of my code. It's got some useful guidance, like make sure the set quoted identifier on, set NC nulls on, etc. And so I can go and quickly remediate those problems, and I will have improved my SQL. The other plugin tool is the Apex tool, and you can see that it integrates itself right into my SSMS. This is the free Apex SQL Refactor tool. It's excellent in the sense that it's got a number of nice refactoring tools in it, including the ability to do a smart rename and other refactoring type options. It can split a table, it can add keys, it can change parameters, it can edit and change relationships. But the one I use most often is Format SQL, so I can go through and get my SQL formatted in my shop standard way. By the way, this is completely configurable. You can go into options in this menu, and you can decide what your shop standard is for formatting SQL, and then you can export that options file and check it into source control and have all of your teams that are working in SSMS use the same set of rules. So that is extremely handy. And the other thing that's really handy is that it has the ability to generate stub code from your SQL Server as any number of languages. I'm a C# developer, so I find that the most useful, but you can use it to do all sorts of really useful things. And so you can take some SQL queries that you've written and quickly wrap them in your favorite functions and do all kinds of great things like that. And you can learn more about that from their documentation. So I'm going to run my most frequently run tool, which is Format SQL, and you can see that it went through and actually restructured my SQL to the shop standard that I had set up. So between those two tools, I have a really powerful set of things that I can do. So now you see that we have a slightly more ornate query plan. And I'm going to open this up a little so it's a little easier to read. And I wanted to point out a feature that many people miss, and that is if you float the mouse over a step, it actually tells you a lot of interesting things about this particular step. And in understanding each of the steps and where time is spent, you can see that we have some nice efficiencies and that we're using a clustered index scam. Why? Because we're doing it on the primary key of the table. And if we look at the execution plan, you can see what percentage of the time in the query is spent on each of the steps and what the elapsed number of seconds is. This one is trivial because it's got a trivial number of rows, but you can drill down to the most expensive operation and look at what the problematic area is. And so that is very useful. One more thing is, don't forget to look at messages. Messages turn out to be very useful. Here we have row count on, and we have the statistics on, and so it's emitting to the messages window the completion time and the rows that are affected, and that can be pretty interesting. And here we can select our statement and go into our Apex SQL refactoring tool and tell it to do wildcard expansion. And it's going to use the IntelliSense, and we're going to get a nice list of columns laid out in a useful way. And it's the same exact result set, but now we are seeing a little bit more detail about the layout of the query itself and what is physically happening, and on columns are involved in each step and what are the projections. And so now I can go and start optimizing this query to have a projection that suits my use case. And by projection, what I mean is I want to now limit the rows that I'm interested in to just the ones that are relevant. And I want to comment out the rows that aren't relevant. And I'm going to use that to evolve my query to match the specification that my UI developer said they needed. They need certain columns, they don't need others. And of course, the more we trim down our column list, the more efficient our query is going to be. Let's go ahead and assume that our UI team said they don't need a bunch of these columns. Okay, let's see where that gets us. And you can see that our query efficiency improved ever so slightly because we reduced the projection. Again, the more rows that were involved, the more this would have increased my efficiency. And now my output is looking more like something that the UI team could consume. We're not showing foreign keys. We're only showing the primary keys that they might need to drill down into. And they have a quantity and a price. And so now we could add, if we wanted to, some calculated columns for the total order and so on. But we're also going to amend this query to do another kind of projection, which is we're going to reduce the scope of the rows returned by filtering out based on some criteria. So we're going to start by getting rid of any customers that are inactive. And we're going to continue to build this query to get rid of any orders that are inactive. And we're going to assume that at the moment that we added a product to a customer, the product was active. In other words, when on the UI, that they wouldn't have asked for products that were inactive, e.g. unavailable. And so we're going to assume that we don't have to check in this case, the active flag on either the order detail or product table. So let's see what the output of that looks like. And you can see that we got a little bit of efficiency. It's sort of hard to tell, but the execution plan stayed pretty much the same in terms of the tree of execution, and our results stayed the same. But now potentially we have trimmed down significantly the amount of bytes going over the wire by trimming the column list and excluding customers that are no longer active and any orders that may have been canceled or are inactive. So these are really great tools, and you can find in-depth tutorials about them in the SQL Server books online.